Is there hope for post-traumatic growth? The Semper Fund, serving thousands of service members since 2004, knows from experience that this hope is real. I'm Karen Gunther, founder and executive director of the Semper Fund. We are excited about new developments in brain research that have opened up new horizons of treatment modalities and effective interventions. On a daily basis, the fund experiences lives transformed by hope. We take concrete steps every day to accompany real people wounded in the service of our country. The fund shows them a new way forward, post-traumatic growth.
PTSD affects everyone who has been through trauma. Trauma is a universal phenomena. It doesn't matter whether it's kicking in doors or breaking doors down to save lives. Trauma is a significant experience that people have to deal with. Fortunately, first responders are well trained to deal with the kind of traumas that they encounter.
I think our future is very bright regarding how we understand PTSD. I think we've made some tremendous strides with the natural progression of expanding our definitions of what trauma includes to now understand a lot more facets of the combat experience and the military experience. I think we've developed some military-specific protocols which are extraordinarily helpful for military therapists and doctors to be able to look at our patients with a specific plan that will work for that culture. And I think we know now more about the brain chemistry, the injuries that take place, the kinds of treatments that we know work, the kinds of alternative treatments that add depth to that growth, and including all facets.
Post-traumatic growth is the expectation, or at least the ideal, or the hope that an individual will be able to recover, and not just recover back to their baseline state, but actually excel and develop a sense of belonging and meaning and worth that actually supersedes their baseline state. In other words, that they return from an ordeal with a sense of not sweating the small stuff, of knowing what's important, of feeling that it's going to be okay.
You're in Maryland now. So what? Maryland? Do you know why you're here? Well, I remember a bomb going off and then putting me on a helicopter, but that's about it. They were like, you don't know, do you? And I said, well, what are you talking about? Do I know what? I was like, well, you stepped on an IED and you lost both your legs. And I can tell you, even I'm talking about it now, it's almost been 4 years to the day. And it's still a little difficult. Putting myself back in that emotion and in that time. I can remember at that moment, though, I couldn't hold back. I cried like a newborn baby. I was just in tears. It's very tough, man.
There have been times when I, completely out of the blue, I threw up on the street as I was crossing the street because a helicopter flew over very low. And it was the right type of helicopter, it was the right pitch, it was the right sound. And I was on the phone thinking about something completely different, and I suddenly felt this urge to just vomit. And it just came out, and I realized what had happened.
Coming back after this one, suddenly my anger outbursts were out of control. I would get mad at the kids for not putting the vacuum cleaner away right. Simple little things. And that wasn't the guy I was. That wasn't the father that I was. That wasn't the husband that I was. So it was scary for them as they're experiencing me blowing up, but also scary for me as I'm like, what the hell is going on? And not being able to explain why.
I was only in Afghanistan for a month, okay, a month. Some of my guys lasted 7 months. What I saw in a month was more than enough, you know, to scar me. Now you take these guys who've pushed the deployment 7 months. I think that their wounds are a lot more severe than mine. And I think that's the perception in a civilian's mindset is like, no, the guy in the wheelchair is more messed up. But it's not necessarily all that way. Now, because I'm an amputee, they always tell me stuff like, well, you know, I don't want to complain about my little injury compared to yours. But again, my personal hell can't be matched to somebody else's personal hell. What you feel at that moment is what you experience, and that's it. Each person has their own battle, and you got to treat it as such. It's your personal journey.
I think we're getting better at understanding complete people and how complete people live through something horrible. Sometimes it affects them, and sometimes those symptoms interfere with their life. That's what we mean by PTSD.
I feel PTSD is something that's kind of like that hidden thing until it's triggered. You never really know, which is why a lot of people over time may not feel like they have PTSD or anything that's, you know, wrong with them until something's triggered 10, 20 years down the road. Bam, there it is.
And originally it was, you know, I'm gonna fix this on my own, that this isn't normal for me. Something misfired right there, but I'm back on track. This will never happen again. And then it would happen again.
We all tend to isolate ourselves, very, very much so. I went through periods where you had to pry me out of my house like a tick because I had so much anxiety going outside and interacting with people. I was afraid I was going to hit somebody or I was going to choke somebody out because I just couldn't deal with people, and I have no idea why. But that's another way that PTSD can manifest itself.
There's a certain point where you no longer can do this alone. You no longer can fight this battle by yourself. You have to talk to someone, and if you don't, it starts to eat at you because you can't understand it all. It's too much to take in. And having someone to talk to, hang out with, you know, chill with, engage with, anything is helpful.
I always had someone to talk to, and that's what saved my life, having someone to talk to. It's really hard sometimes even to ask somebody for help, but once you do it, you will feel relief. Once you talk to someone, you feel that pain slowly going away. It took me 7 years to get that pain inside me, at least inside me, just to go away a little bit, to have a normal life.
The first 6 to 9 months following transition out of the military are particularly difficult. In fact, that's a time that researchers have identified as an at-risk period. And it's largely because of the loss of connection and coherence and solidarity that an individual has with their unit and their command. And it's almost as if their identity has been transitioned away from them as well.
You build a really common bond. You will never forget them for the rest of your life, especially the ones that you serve with in combat. And you get that connection where you feel very comfortable reaching out to those individuals. Even after you get back off deployment, you reach out to your buddies that serve with you because you know that they went through the same thing that you went through and they understand you. So that's how you build that team.
One thing that I've learned is that I can call people, and it doesn't matter what time I call them, they'll answer. And what's really unique about that is social media has really connected that. I've posted on Facebook at 3 o'clock in the morning, or I've posted, man, I can't sleep, and within seconds I'll have somebody, I can't sleep either. And the next thing you know, we're on private messaging each other.
Every veteran I've ever talked to who has it, we don't sleep. Sleep is a very precious and elusive quarry. You just don't sleep. You can't sleep, your mind never shuts off, you're always alert and always thinking.
I begin pretty much all my conversations asking the individual to really share with me how they're sleeping. And you know, sleep is such a vital and important recovery tool that irrespective of what it was that individual has been through, that individual really needs to have quality sleep, 7 to 8 hours of restorative sleep to be able to heal from whatever wound it is that they have suffered. Whether it be an invisible wound, whether it be a physical wound, whether it just be the wound of chronic wear and tear.
Treatment's tough. It's hard work, and having the family on board makes a big difference. But I always want those caregivers or spouses, sometimes even children, to understand what PTSD is, at least a little bit, so that they can be part of the process, part of that team, if you will, that unit that's gonna bind together to achieve this, that's gonna get through it together. It's extraordinarily powerful. And it helps them understand too, so that I think that we can lessen the pain of the entire process.
It doesn't matter if you're senior in the military or junior in the military. If you've been to combat, seen the horrors of combat, you have some type of PTS. But it's the way that you deal with it. For me, I have it, but it's the way that I deal with it. But I have a family support. I have somebody I think of higher, than me, and I have my fellow Marines supporting me.
Thankfully, my husband did want help. He didn't want to be down the rabbit hole anymore. He wanted to come out. And my husband uses this terminology to explain PTSD to other people who don't understand it, is that when you start feeling your feelings of sadness, fear, whatever it may be, you start going down a hole of, I shouldn't be alive. Why me? A lot of survivor's guilt. And you can choose to go back up and seek help, or you can continue going down and just live in a completely dark place.
We are very tough people, and so we don't like to show signs of weakness. We don't like to show when we're hurt or injured or dealing with certain things. We like to do it on our own. And when someone's just trying to poke at you, trying to get information out, and you're just like, I don't want to, I'm fine, leave me alone, they now get exhausted because they don't have nothing to work with. And then when they start to step away, then we're frustrated because now they're stepping away. So it's a very back and forth kind of thing, and it's very frustrating, and it takes a lot of patience. I would give a lot of praise and props to the spouse because it's a lot. It is a lot.
It was very important for me to interact with other spouses. I didn't realize at the time how many friendships I would make, people who would understand what I was going through. Maybe not exactly the same situation, but they knew without even saying a word. They knew, you're having a bad day, I'm having a bad day, let's feel better together.
There are times that I had to learn to not feel guilty by maybe going and doing something by myself. Sometimes my husband would feel obligated to join me and it wouldn't be a good experience for him. There are other times I wouldn't go and do things and stay home with him, and he would feel badly because I didn't go. And so we really had to learn how to balance those things out, and how we both have to take care of ourselves in our own unique way. And that took some learning. I wanted to be a superhero at first and always be there and always do what he needed. And we both learned that wasn't best for anybody.
The ultimate message of hope is to know that PTSD is most definitely treatable, and there is this light that's out there for people as they've moved through the treatment. They can develop this growth, this great change and positive transformation as a result of what they've lived through. And I think knowing that's possible is so important for their caregivers and their family members who have sacrificed so much and have been through so much with them.
It took me getting out and having experienced art therapy amongst other combat vets and other warriors, and slowly but surely hope picked back up through art.
Creative expression is incredibly important in recovery. When the brain is challenged in creative ways, it actually develops new pathways, these so-called neuroplastic changes, and these changes really allow the brain to rewire and reheal. and anything that I can do as a therapist to introduce different creative ideas and techniques to an individual really help that therapeutic process. The quality of the work isn't really what's important. What's important is that that individual challenges their right brain.
Well, it takes time. You know, time heals. The second that you think that you're in control is the second that it's all gonna go haywire. As long as that you know you're conscious of what you have to deal with, then it can be managed. For me, horses was my therapy. I ride regularly just to keep my mind straight. The horse teaches us something, and it taught me patience.
I wanted to get better, but working with Lundy is the one piece of therapy that I could pinpoint where things really started to turn around. All the puzzle pieces just fell back into place.
One of the most recognized practices of integrative medicine is exercise. In fact, if it weren't for exercise, we would probably have a lot more symptomatic individuals, because exercise is a great way to bind anxiety and irritability and aggression.
There was a time where I was really down, kind of lost, but I started doing a lot of sports just to get out of my room. And one day I come back and I'm walking around Balboa Hospital, and my Navy friend comes up to me. He's like, you know what? You motivate the hell out of me. And I'm no different than he was. He's missing the leg below the knee, and that made the hugest impact to me, was you motivate the hell out of me. And I was not intentionally trying to motivate anyone. I was just trying to get away from everything. But that is what pushed me to be better every day from that point on, was I wanted to inspire someone.
There's a perception that many of us who have served come back unbalanced, and quite frankly, there's nothing further from the truth. A small minority of individuals will be ultimately diagnosed with PTSD, but nowhere near the 50 to 60% that people expect. The best way to change the perception about the utility and the value and the health of the veteran is to get to know the veteran. In fact, there are many programs out there which really encourage the introduction or reintroduction of veterans into their communities.
The treatments that we use for PTSD are all about understanding the trauma in a different way, going in and sort of unprocessing the way it's been processed. The mind does this as a defense mechanism. When something horrible has happened, there's an actual physical injury that happens in the brain, and the trauma gets encoded in a way that sometimes can get illogical and distorted, and it can cause a lot of problems in our lives. That's really what leads to the symptoms. So while we're doing the work to help sort of unstick some of those places the trauma's become stuck, I'm also always looking for that path that's gonna take us past the trauma, that's gonna transcend the experience, if you will, and take that service member and his or her family to the other side. That's post-trauma growth. It often is described as the best and worst moment of my life, some of these traumatic experiences. When you can get to a point where you can think of it that way, that means you're growing out of it. You're growing because of it, in spite of it. You're going on to be better because it happened. Not that you'd ever wish it on anyone because it was horrible, but you have found a way to end up a stronger, more resilient, more flexible, more understanding, more compassionate, all the above person. And that is post-trauma growth, growing through and out of and above this horrible experience.
Being injured was the very best thing that happened to me. I see that now because it taught me that there needs to be balance in life between being that hard person and being that soft person, being the one that leads and being the one that needs to follow, being the one that offers advice and is there to pick someone up, and being the one that also needs to ask for help.
What I've learned through all of this is that the strength that you have within, you don't know it until you have to dig down deep and find it. Really, with the days that you feel you can't go on, there is something else in there.
I always try and go back to that time in my life and remember what the outcome could have been and how fortunate I am just to have him be a hard-headed, difficult person sometimes.
That's what our mission is now. It's gone from serving our country to serving our country in a different way. It's fighting the enemies of our country to fighting the enemies of our country in a different way. The enemies of our country now are despair and hopelessness, PTSD. It's just a different battlefield. Same oath. You never stop serving.